Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Sally Wilson and I have with me as my guest today Dr. Helen Mursell, who is one of our mentors for TRTP. Welcome, Helen.
Hi, Sal.
So, Helen, one of the areas that you work in TRTP is actually in helping people with their performance, in improving their performance. Given that this is a trauma process, that might be confusing to some people. I'm just wondering if you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I might start off with a little bit of a story a little into that. So in preparation for today, knowing that I was going to be talking about performance, I thought, well, Google psychology and performance, because that's what I used to do, which is prepare a lot because I used to be a perfectionist and used to have unrelenting standards. And then I thought to myself, well, I looked at some of the stuff and it was very boring and it took a long time. And I thought, what am I even doing this for? And it really wasn't very interesting. And I didn't stop preparing because I have become what a lot of people fear will happen if you let go of those unrelenting standards. I didn't become lazy and can't be bothered. I, in fact, felt no need to do so because within me was a sense of, I've got this. I don't need to relentlessly prepare and hope that it's all going to be okay and just go with the flow, because that's what I guess going through the process of TRTP has done. It enables you to have a strong sense of self, have the self-belief. There's no sort of sabotaging unconscious core beliefs going on that says, well, you better do that because you might mess it up. You don't know what Sal's going to ask you. So it's none of that. Just be yourself. So to answer your question, I guess, why I do have a lot of clients, a lot of my clients do come and they are often experiencing burnouts related to stress and performance. And what is the connection there? The connection is around what has happened early in life has sort of sowed the seeds in terms of our inner dialogue that we tell ourselves, and the consequences of that are often extreme high expectations on oneself, the need to be better, the best, perfect, and all those things come about as, sometimes people think about trauma, they think about that event that happened to someone, or that is usually extreme, and everyone goes, oh yes, that was such a traumatic event. But there's also sort of small t trauma, if you like, or insidious little messages that are sort of a little bit like poison. It's just sort of placed there, and it builds into a sense of the sense that we have of ourselves or the world around us. So if I could give an example of that, let's say growing up, a client might have a report card that's got 5 A's and a B, and they take their report card to mum and dad, all excited, so happy. Wow, look at this, I did really well. And dad sort of points to the B with a look of disappointment almost on his face, a look that could kill a young child's feeling of, how good am I, and points to the B and says, oh, what happened there? Well, how do we get that B to up to there? So in that moment, that child learns a very powerful message that anything less than 100% is not good enough. Fast forward in their life and they become an adult who is relentlessly trying to be perfect in their life.
Yeah.
So it's those little insidious messages that create, sow the seeds for that unrelenting standards that often happens and leads to burnout and perfectionism.
Yeah. And something that you alluded to earlier is, when people have had those standards, they fear what will happen to them if they lose that as their driver. So I'm just wondering if you could just touch on sort of positive drivers, negative drivers, the difference, what happens when we're driven by negative, not even quite the right word, but drivers that don't necessarily uplift us. Could you just talk about that a little bit, please, Helen?
Yeah, sure. So we all have a set of unconscious core beliefs about ourselves and the world. That's that inner dialogue, if you like, that little can either be a little champion that's spurring you on, saying you've got this, you can do this, or an inner critic that is telling you, no, that wasn't good enough, you need to do better, you need to do better. And often people that do have those unrelenting standards or that sort of perfectionism have often got a little inner critic inside them that is giving them the message that nothing that they ever do is good enough and it needs to be better. And that absolutely comes to the detriment of our performance. And often people that have those inner critic, they're either relentlessly striving to work very, very hard. As I said previously, I would have spent hours preparing for today, or procrastinate, knowing how much work would be involved to meet that high standard, so they would put it off or deter it because the work that's involved, or they're never going to achieve that high standard that they do. So for when you take the inner critic out and you replace the inner critic with a little champion that says you've got this, you can do this, that's when it opens up people can actually work to their potential and achieve without effortlessly.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's such a great point, because so many people who are perfectionists and who are high achievers, they do fear whether they'll have the motivation if they lose those negative drivers, but to know that it actually helps us to reach different, better, higher heights, right. Better performance. I mean, I'm talking from the sort of the creative field myself, but it. When I've worked with athletes, for example, and I knew you were an athlete, who are so driven that they actually can't take a day off to rest and recover, for example. I mean, that's a very obvious example. Are there other examples in terms of sports that come to mind for you where this kind of thing manifests?
Yeah. So one of the things I say, just to sort of finish off on that other point that we're making, one of the things I often say to clients is that you're not going to have some personality change where you go from being a driven, determined, high achieving person to someone that can't get out of bed. Yeah, you're just going to shave off the unrelenting standards to high standards, the overachiever to a high achieving. There's a big difference in the messages that we give ourselves around that. So it's not like people are going to dramatically shift and become a completely different person. They're just going to actually be their true self energy, which is a beautiful energy that allows them to absolutely open up to all things possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the sporting arena, because as you know, that's my background. One of the things that I think can get in the way, certainly gets in the way of myself, and I've noticed in clients, is the intellect or the analyzing of something, and the structuring the practice so that it sort of it's something that we have to do as opposed to just a felt energy. And also I think in terms of performance, if I move to, how do we maximize our performance when we've actually done the work. So in terms of performance, I have a personal story, which back then I didn't know what on earth was happening, but I sort of know through TRTP what happened for me. So all the sports psychologists, if you Google sports psychology, visualization will come up. But it's so much more than just visualizing yourself running the perfect race. It's imagining that felt sense when you've run that perfect race, which you've imagined, but also imagining the feeling when you hear that roar of the crowd as they stand to their feet and you're actually experiencing goosebumps in that moment. That, to me, is what differentiates people that do okay and people that perform to their highest level. That capacity to richly imagine and to be present and in that moment. And the inner critic loves to take us out of that the present.
Yeah.
When I was a Royal Tennis professional many, did I say many years ago? And I remember in one of the finals, it was very, very close, and I was beginning to get very stressed. So I just said to myself, just focus on this point. Just focus on this point. And that kept me back into the moment and present, so that my inner critic couldn't take me away if I'd hit the ball into the net and go, I can't believe you did that. You just didn't prepare enough, etc., etc. So what TRTP does is it takes the emotional charge out of past events, that it also changes those unconscious core beliefs from limiting to limitless.
Yes.
So that we are able to be present and in that moment and focus on that point, knowing that we've got this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Helen, thank you so much for your time and wisdom and for sharing your experience with us today. It's been so valuable. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Sarah.
And listeners and watchers, thank you all for joining us in this conversation as well. Bye, everyone.